going? And welcome back to another one of our modules. Here what we're going to be taking a look at is movement and how to incorporate movement throughout your lessons. I'll give you a few different ideas in regards to how to integrate movement with the comic, but I'll also focus a little bit differently in this case in regards to how to integrate movement and kinesthetic learning within your general curriculum. With that in mind, a few key points for you I'd like to get started with. Some of the benefits for incorporating movement include better engagement. The more time you give your students out of their seat, the better off they're going to be in regards to the engagement level. It'll be higher. They'll also have fun as they're working on different projects. This is the type of stuff they go home after working on a movement lesson or a kinesthetic learning experience. They go home, they talk to their parents about it, they talk to their friends about it. It's the fun stuff. The goal here is to take learning and make it more interesting, more engaging, and the key word being fun. So a few other things. We've come to understand within the past few years that movement has a few very, very important benefits. One of those benefits includes better engagement. Another benefit incorporates higher test scores. We've found that, or studies indicate that as students move and say things, that becomes embedded in a slightly different manner than when they're simply reading it. So they get a higher recall rate, you could say. Also, your students tend to be more focused, and throughout this I'll show you a few different ways in regards to how to focus your students with a few brain gym ideas. We'll get into that a little bit later. Also, with movement and kinesthetic learning, classrooms that integrate this tend to have better classroom management because they can throw in those techniques and strategies and get their students out of their seats and moving to do work. We get into increased levels of comprehension as our students are, say, reading some story out of an anthology or a collection, so to say, of stories, and they begin to integrate movement. The comprehension levels truly increase. I'll give you an example. With vocabulary, I have a strategy for you in regards to Simon Says. If you've seen some of the other videos, you've kind of seen this and are somewhat familiar with it already. But I found that before integrating movement, general class average was about in the 80s category on vocab tests. Might be like an 82-83% overall class average. After integrating movement, I found that those scores increased by about 10 percentage points. So instead of the class average being an 82-83%, it's moved up to about a 92-93%, and that's a class average. Other ideas, as students move, we know that the brain releases chemicals in the form of dopamine, and that creates those happy feelings with our students. It also leads to increased oxygen rates and increased blood flow. And to move right along here, as we're getting into movement, there are a few key points I want to focus on. The very first one are basically rules. Every time you incorporate a new strategy or a new idea, you always want to integrate some classroom management portion to it, and this would be that. Rule number 1, no hurting self. Rule number 2, no hurting others. Because throughout this movement stuff, one of the most common things that we see is our students want to be in a position of power. We want them to do that, but in a way that's safe for themselves as well as for others throughout the classroom. Rule number 3, no busting up the place. We want our classroom exactly the way it is. We know our students are really creative and they love to move around. We want to keep our classroom as neat as possible. Rule number 4, a really important one, most important of the rules, always be respectful, not only of yourself, but of others within the classroom. Others are trying to work. We want to create an environment that's conducive to their work and to their needs for learning and to their needs for movement. So these rules pretty much cover everything in regards to the movement within the classroom. Moving right along. Some key movement terms. One of the first ones that I want to talk about here is size. When your student's moving, what is the size of their movement? Is it large? Is it small? Another thing, direction. Are they traveling in a forward direction? Are they traveling in a backward direction? Are they going this way? Are they going that way? Direction. Other things include shape. Is the shape round? Is the shape straight? Is it curvy? Moving right along. As we get into force, we tend to think of energy. How much energy are they exerting? Is the energy truly a really high level of energy, or is it a really low, calm level of energy? Also, in regards to space, when we talk about the word space, we get into a very different word. The word is kinosphere. The word is spelled K-I-N-O, followed by sphere. Kinosphere is basically the area of movement. So if I was to stick out my hands and arms in this direction, this constitutes my kinosphere. If I go up this way, that includes my kinosphere. A way to think of it is if I was to discuss kinospheres, and another way, or probably a more common term that most people would know, is bubble. This is my bubble. Don't get in my bubble because you may interfere with my learning process. The technical term being kinosphere here. So if I was to introduce that concept, I might start off with, everyone raise your thumb. This is the kinosphere of my thumb, the manner in which I can move it. From there I might move on to my wrists and my fingers. What is the kinosphere? So basically your students here are exploring a range of motion. From there you can move on to the arm. What is the kinosphere of my arm? And then integrate basically the rest of the body. A typical hierarchy here: thumb, hand, wrist, elbow, arm, both arms, upper body, lower body. So now your students are doing this kind of stuff and exploring their kinospheres. Other things include general information about this whole process with movement and kinesthetic learning. A few tidbits of information for you that you should know. In regards to the time, this project could take anywhere from 2 to 3 months, assuming that you go through all of it in its entirety. I created a set of 3 lesson plans. Every lesson plan is a little bit different and incorporates different movement ideas. If you were to go through the whole process, more or less 1 lesson plan per month. If you wanted to just kind of pick and pull, oh, I really like that idea for movement, that idea for movement is really good, this one I like, and then integrate them into what you do, then it would definitely be much, much shorter. Grades, generally the movement ideas and principles here apply to a range of kindergarten up through about 12th grade. I've also done a lot of these activities in some of my college courses, so it would even move on as far as college classes. The setup, in regards to setup, when you're doing the majority of the movements here and activities, one thing that you do need a little bit of, not a whole lot, you don't need an empty room, but you do need to give your students a little bit of space. That may include them going over to a corner of the classroom and working there. It may include having your students go outside or sending one group outside because there's a limited amount of space within the classroom. To give you an idea, I have 32 students in my classroom, just a regular sized classroom, nothing special about it. And within the classroom I can have all students working on, say, a tableau or on their various movement ideas, and everyone is completely safe, and again emphasize those rules. The last one, materials for this movement or kinesthetic learning project are very, very minimal. Basically boils down to a few things. I'd say paper, pencil, maybe a whiteboard marker. Definitely space is going to be something that would be involved there, and some type of reading, whatever you may be using for reading materials, say for example an anthology, a collection, a history book, a science book. These principles and ideas can be integrated there, even outside of the comic book project or the comic experience here. Thank you very much, and I'll be seeing you shortly with our very next video on a lesson plan. Thank you very much. See you soon.